Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Leverage Your Podcast show. And you may have heard me on other episodes talk about Press Page, Media Kit, Media Page. And so today we're actually going to dive deeper into it as I chat with Eric Melchor of PodKit. When I found it, I had to reach out to Eric and say, I need to know more. So here you are, Eric. Welcome to the show. And yeah, I'm pumped to dive into Media Kits.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lindsay, for having me on the show. As you probably already know, podcaster myself for over 3 years, and I discovered that Podkit was something that didn't really exist in the market, and I'm sure we'll kind of go deeper into that. But love being here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's a lot of jargon out there. People kind of know about one sheets, especially those that are guesting on podcasts, but they may not be as familiar with the term media kit, media page. So let's just lay down the foundation. And how would you describe that?
Yeah, a media kit can be. I've seen them all. It can be like a PDF, few pages. It could be some slides, like Google Slides. It can be a Canva presentation. But essentially, it's information about your show and about your audience, and you're trying to convey why a sponsor or an advertiser would want to work with you. You should have a media kit if you're trying to attract sponsors. It's generally the first question that they ask is, "Can you send me your media kit?" You should have one if you're trying to save time. So instead of answering the same questions over and over, like how many downloads do you get or who's your audience, you just send them your media kit, and it makes you look more professional. It shows that you take your podcast seriously instead of just trying to put all that information like in one email or in one DM or something like that. So it kind of sets you apart from other podcasters who don't have a media kit. And the main thing, it tells your podcast story, and it kind of highlights your show and your value and why it matters and why people should be sponsoring your show.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to take one step back. So, who would you say is a media kit for? Because I heard you say sponsors, but should speakers, any podcasters in general, whether they're getting sponsors or not, like, should we all have
Absolutely.
a media kit?
Absolutely. If you're a speaker, professional speaker, or trying to get more speaking gigs, if you're an influencer, creator, you should have a media kit because it's not just for sponsors and advertisers. Obviously, if you want to monetize your show, then that's why I talk about advertisers or sponsors, right? But think about it. If you're trying to collaborate, maybe with another podcaster, maybe do a podcast swap or some sort of like cross promotion. So any sort of potential collaborations, then a media kit, it kind of shows them, allows them to see if it's a good fit. Or maybe there's PR teams or media outlets that you want to try to get your show featured in. Then you can send those people your media kit. Journalists often ask for media kits as well. And then also maybe there's like events that you want to be a part of. You're trying to, get a speaking gig at a certain kind of event. Then you can pitch yourself, and when you're pitching yourself, obviously you can send your media kit as well because it kind of strengthens your case as to why you should be a speaker at that show. So it's not just for sponsors. Think about PR, media teams, potential collaborations, and events as well.
That's a great point. Where would you put your media kit? Because you said PDF, which obviously you can send throughout email. But I know for me, I love when I see a media kit on someone's website. I just think that opens up so many more doors. And when you're like, scouting someone out and you're checking out their website and you see the media kit or you see, different visibility features that they've done, it just ticks off a box and makes it easier to say yes. Besides the website, are there other places that you can share it?
Absolutely. Your website, there should be a link on there. If you don't have a website, at least create a Dropbox or some sort of Google Drive folder, and then you could put it there and then use that link and share that link on your social channels or maybe your LinkedIn profile. So that's the other places that you can put it. Obviously, PodKit, you get your own unique link, and it's a shareable and dynamic link in your show, your audience stats. They automatically update without you having to go and refresh that data, and you could share that link as well. But yeah, it should definitely be on your website. Social channels, definitely LinkedIn if you're active there, or on X or Instagram. Try to include it wherever people are going to be learning more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. And same with like the link in your bio if you're using Linktree or whatever of those. I think that's really important. And of course, we're going to dive into PodKit and some of the features and kind of what is that. But again, just kind of want to talk about the strategies involved. Um, so when you have a media kit, I'm assuming it will be slightly different if you're looking for sponsors versus getting booked on podcasts. Would you need two media kits?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I
Okay.
think a media kit is primarily if you're looking for, sponsors or some sort of collaborations. If you're trying to get booked as a guest, I think a one sheet
Yeah.
still plays a big role in there, where not even a one sheet. I mean, okay, a one sheet, but you can also have like a Canva shareable link that maybe has a few different slides about you. And it's so easy to create a quick, shareable link on Canva, like a little mini website, and have information about you that could be booked for you to be booked as a guest. So when I think of media kits, I think of primarily influencers and podcasters, Lindsay. Yeah.
Sounds good. And what do we include in a media kit?
Okay, so if you're a podcaster, information about your podcast. That could be the podcast name, the tagline, a short description, a few sentences of what your show is about. Obviously, some audience insights. Sponsors want to know who's tuning in, so you should include demographic information,
Ah,
any information such as age, gender, and location. Location is a big one. I work with a lot of advertisers, and I represent a lot of podcasters. And one of the big questions is like, okay, where are they based? What's the location? And if you have any information about their interests or behaviors, a lot of my podcasters, they put in their media kits the people who follow them on LinkedIn. So maybe they have a lot of like CEOs and founders that follow them, and they include that information. Or maybe another podcaster they talk a lot about fitness, and so fitness lovers is like another big follower for their show. The third thing that you want to have in there is analytics. Okay. And these are things like maybe the total downloads for your show. You could also get a little bit more specific and put stats from Spotify or Apple Podcasts and YouTube. And then, of course, if you're on social, then definitely include your social media followers and any sort of engagement rates for those social channels. The fourth thing that you want to put in there, this is very important, is past partnerships and sponsorships, collaborations, the brands that you worked with in the past. So list them, include those in there, and feel free to share any sort of like success stories or any campaign results that you have. And then finally, the last thing, of course, is your contact information. You want to make it easy for people to get in touch with you. So definitely include your email address, and you can also include your website and any social media links as well. So those five things: contact information, past partnerships that you've done, analytics, and then also any sort of audience insights, and then, of course, information about your podcast.
yeah, that's a great run through. And I wouldn't have really thought about like describing your audience or who your followers are, what their interests are. But when you're coming from an advertiser's perspective, they want to know that. They want to know that your peeps are their peeps and you know what you mean? You want to connect the two. So that's super smart. Do you need to put like your email list? Because I guess they want to know like what your reach is, right? Like with your podcast, with your social, with your email list. Do they look at that holistically or are they just focused on the podcast numbers?
Well, it's primarily the podcast numbers and the audience. I mean, the audience is really the big thing. So I've got some podcasters that have less than 150 downloads a month, and I've been able to get them sponsorships because it's the audience. It's with the content
Right.
that they talk about. And so I generally include information about the topics that the podcast covers.
Ooh.
And it's so easy to do this nowadays. I mean, nowadays you can just sort of you can ask ChatGPT, like, what are the main topics? Give me the three main topics that this podcast talks about. And then I will include that information in any sort of media kits that I'm creating or proposals that I'm creating. So it says this podcaster, their primary audience are these people. These, it could be job titles. These are the main topics that they talk about, and then here's the primary location of their listeners. And it's usually either North America or maybe Europe. Or maybe the UK as well. So those are like key information that it's very, very helpful for advertisers. I mean, if they're trying to go to market with a specific product in a specific market, and their product is really useful around certain topics, then that's key information.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of being that granular, but I don't do sponsorship, so but that makes total sense. Um, Now, what are some of the mistakes that people make in creating their own media kit? They think, "Oh, I can just create it on my own."
Yeah.
Um, what horror stories have you seen, Eric?
I think too much information is a big one because I get media kits all the time from podcasters. And sure, that information is great, but it's not really necessary. And it could just be, I think anything more than 6 or 7 slides is too much. And so I think cramming a lot of information is just advertisers don't have time to like really go into detail and look at all that information. So I think too much information. The
Yeah,
second biggest mistake is not having a media kit at all. And that's a huge mistake. And I understand because as a podcaster, it takes a lot of effort and time to create it. You have to go into Canva and either do it yourself, and you're taking screenshots of different stats from all the different platforms, and you're trying to find information about your audience and plug that in there. And it takes a few hours to create it. And the horrible thing is that after a couple of months, your numbers have changed. More than likely you've got more listeners, more followers, or whatever, and so you have to update that, and that's a big hassle. Or you have to pay a designer to do it. There's a lot of podcasters that pay a designer, usually every month or whatever, to go in there and update the media kit. So it's a big hassle creating one in the first place and then updating it. And that's why my partner and I would create a PodKit, and it's like a very simple way, less than 5 minutes. You create this beautiful, dynamic, shareable media kit and has all your information, all the stats updated in real time. You never have to mess with it again. So you create it one time and you've got this wonderful link that you can share, and you never have to mess with it again because your YouTube numbers, your Spotify, your Apple, even if you're on TikTok, if you want to include that, or Instagram or LinkedIn, all those numbers get updated automatically. And so you just don't have to mess with it anymore. Now, I kind of went off tangent here again. So let's go back to the initial question, which I
no,
think
all
were some of the
good.
mistakes. Yeah. So the mistakes are too much information, not having a media kit at all. Oh, and then the other one is not sharing the actual download numbers, like your monthly numbers. And I've seen more and more podcasters do this where they put like my total audience. And so they're combining their LinkedIn followers with their
Right.
TikTok followers, and they have this total followers, but the campaign is for a podcast ad spot campaign, and there's no information about the podcast downloads. And it's like, oh, that's very irritating. And I'm not sure if they're doing that intentionally, but you should have that, especially if the advertiser is looking to advertise in your podcast. You need to be transparent with them. So those are probably the three biggest things that I see, Lindsay.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I think people shy away because they're like, "Oh, my numbers are so small." But like you said, it's like your audience, your niche, the topics, the interests of your audience. Um, I think that is more important than, spreading everything around to the masses. You want to really niche down and zero in on your avatar.
Mhm.
Um, Now, what I love about PodKit, so I want to dive into the app a little bit more. The fact that it does update in live time all those numbers, like, oh my God, what time that saves you. Because, like you said, all the numbers change. And to have to update that and hire a graphic designer to fix it all the time, and you forget, you know what I
Yep.
mean? You send it out willy-nilly and you forget that it needs to be updated. So to not have to think about that is huge. That's so smart. I've never done this on my podcast before, but for those that are watching in video or watching in YouTube, I'm actually going to share my screen so you can see it because it is so friggin' slick. So I'm going to share for the first time ever, Eric, on my podcast. Let's see what happens here.
All right.
All right. Yeah. I think it's super cool that there's movement in the background. Like it looks so high tech. And I'm just going to talk it through for those that are strictly listening. So along the top, I see the links for YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, past sponsorships. That's super smart. And obviously, people can download this. That's handy. I see the numbers for this My First Million podcast that has like how many views they have on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. And it's not super wordy, like visually, it's quick and easy to extract that information. I see that you highlight an episode. So let
Mhm.
me ask you this, do you pick a specific episode for that?
You pick the specific episode that you want
Oh,
to
okay.
highlight, and you pick the video that you want to show in the background from YouTube. So those are your choices right there.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, if you scroll down a little bit, you can basically choose which platform you want to appear on top. So if you want to show your Apple Podcast numbers at the very
Right.
top below the video, you can have that. However, if you're an influencer and you want to show your TikTok numbers, then that could actually be listed
Mhm.
as number one. So you can control the layout of your podcast.
Yeah. And so for those that can't see right now, it's pulling in like almost like a dashboard of like, here are all the Spotify stats, here are all the Apple stats, um, YouTube stats. And I love that it previews some of the key posts for Instagram. Wow, it's really extensive. Past collaborators.
Yep. And Lindsay, the other cool
Love it.
thing that I didn't think about, but oftentimes when somebody's researching you and they'll see that, oh, okay, you've got an Instagram account. I have an Instagram account, but I'm not really active on there. And so I think I have maybe less than 100 followers, which doesn't really make me look that good if I'm trying to get a sponsorship and I'm talking about how popular my podcast is, right? So you have the ability to not include
Yeah.
the different social channels if you don't want to. Just include the ones that you've got a good presence on, you've got a lot of good audience on. But I think that's the other great thing about PodKit is that you're only highlighting your the channels that you've got a good following. You're putting your best foot forward as opposed to leaving it in the hands of somebody who doesn't know, and they may go to the wrong platform where you don't have a
Yes.
strong presence, and then they have that first impression of you like, oh well, look, they're on TikTok, but they don't have that many followers, and so that's that first impression that they have of you. That's not that great.
Yeah. And you are able to really highlight what makes you unique, what your strengths are, where you're doing really well, what your audience responds to. Because I see here that it embeds a few of like the TikTok reels that you've done or Instagram reels, and you can see the ones that have, gotten like a ton of likes or a ton of engagement. So I think that really helps too for the sponsors showcase what your audience is resonating with, what's working, what's not working. Yeah, I've never seen anything like this before. It's pretty darn impressive.
Well, I'm glad you like it. We're pretty excited about it. We've gotten some really good feedback. And what's even more exciting, Lindsay, what's coming down the road in the next few weeks is that we have this cool AI feature that's going to automatically find ideal sponsors for your show.
Ooh.
And so basically, after you type in what your show is about, who your target audience and who your listeners are, then it's going to automatically populate. Here's some of the sponsors that you should go after. And by the way, here's the people you can contact to reach out to. And it's primarily, a lot of the marketing people, either the growth marketers or head of content at those companies. And so you'll be able to see their profiles and know their names and everything. And we're really, really excited about this because it just makes it so much easier to find ideal sponsors for your show. And that's coming out in a few weeks.
Yeah. And like if a sponsor sees this page versus like a PDF that you've kind of made in Canva, like this is like light years beyond. And I think it shows that more that you know your audience, you know your podcast. You're just showcasing everything that's like the best of the best. Yeah, it just blows my mind. Like I just think it's super slick.
And Lindsay, because I work with brands that are trying to advertise and podcasts, and sometimes I'll try and go and work with or collaborate with a podcaster I've never worked with before, and I'll see their show highlighted on another another podcast portal or network, and it will say something like, oh, I reach startup founders and I get like 3,800 downloads a month or whatever, and I'll reach out to the person. I'm gonna and say, hey, I'm interested. I want to talk more. I may have this sponsorship opportunity. As a policy for me, though, I do need to see a screenshot of your download numbers with the name of your podcast and the screenshot for at least the last 6 months. They'll send that over, and the truth is, they get like 700 downloads a month. And
Ooh,
so there's a lot of, I guess you would say, BS out there that people are inflating their
yeah,
numbers. But with this, you're seeing actual numbers from directly from the platforms,
not
directly from
inflated.
YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So there's no chance of you getting fraudulent numbers that are inflated. So that's the other great thing for advertisers, and why we think both the podcasters and advertisers are going to really appreciate this.
That's a great point. And I think because of that, establishes that element of trust that much faster, and they would be more willing to work with you because you're not like, I don't know. It is what it is. It's truth. And so, just so I understand correctly, obviously you've made this amazing piece of software to help your clients. So you work with your clients direct as well to help them get sponsors?
Yes. And so a little over a year ago, I founded a niche network for B2B. And it's B2B podcasters that are primarily in SaaS, human resources, or digital transformation, and a little bit of e-commerce as well. And
Okay.
so there's over 60 podcasters in my network, and we primarily work with mid-sized and enterprise SaaS businesses that are looking to do ad spots and podcasts. But primarily, they want to be a part of the thought leaders, in the space, who happen to be podcasters, because most podcasters in my network, they were not looking to monetize their show. They use it as a way to build authority and a credibility, but they don't mind having a very, reputable podcaster, or I'm sorry, advertiser on their show, because they believe, and I do believe it too, is that it makes their podcast feel more, I guess you would say, more legit. There's just having that brand value, like, oh wow, for example, HubSpot, sponsors my podcast, and a person hears that when they're listening, they're like, oh wow, this person takes
That's
their
true.
podcast very seriously. And so a lot of podcasters that work with me, we do one ad on their show. It's usually a host read ad, and I manage everything for them. I go back and forth with the sponsor regarding the ad script, regarding the terms and conditions, and negotiating the fee. And I make the podcaster's life very, very easy. The only thing they have to do is record the ad and then put it in their show, and that's it for them. For the sponsors, it's very easy too, because they just work. They don't have to spend a lot of time trying to contact and email a podcast and never hearing back, or going back and forth, because all of my proposals, I don't just pitch one podcast. I usually pitch, okay, if you work with me, we do a campaign, then we're going to do a campaign for this time period, for these 5 to 10 podcasts. So it's a group buy, and,
Oh,
and that's
okay.
how brands generally work with me. But anyway, I started that about a year and a half ago, because there wasn't like it in the marketplace. Because for B2B podcasts, the average downloads for podcasts in the B2B space are maybe around 300 or 400 a month. Well, we can't monetize our show on a CPM basis, because it's just not going to work that way. And we know that our audience is very valuable. They're decision makers at their companies, deciding which tools to use. I mean, some of these tools can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 per year. And so we know we have a valuable audience, and so therefore we do a flat fee whenever we do a campaign. We don't do a CPM fee.
Yeah, that makes more sense. I love that there's so many more options for the B2B that aren't like a massive brand because there is such a small percentage of podcasters that are in that 1% that are getting 50,000 downloads per month or whatever it may be. But like you said, there are loyal listener base. There are listeners that are buying from what they hear on podcasts or taking action on that. So it's it's not all about the numbers, it's about the quality and the niche and that engagement and them taking action. Like I
Yeah.
just think to have that resource available for the regular Joe B2B podcaster is really valuable.
Question for you, Lindsay. What's the weirdest thing you ever bought from a podcast ad that you heard your host talk about and you're like, I'm going to buy that?
I don't think I have actually. And I'm not really a listener. Like I listen, but I usually watch. I like to watch the videos. I like to watch in YouTube and I watch on desktop, which is not the norm,
Yeah.
but whatever. And I'm trying to think, have I ever Yeah, I don't know. If I did, it was probably like an app for my business,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people
another
buy. I
tool.
mean, yeah. I mean, whenever your favorite host recommends something, you kind of take it as face value and you're like, okay, I'm
Hmm,
going to try that. I'm going to go check that website out or whatever. I bought frozen crickets one time, Lindsay. Frozen crickets
frozen
for
crickets?
frozen crickets for my shake, my health shake. And it was because Tim Ferriss was talking about it has 3 times the amount of protein that you get from like whey protein shakes.
Yeah.
And so I put them in my morning shake, mixed it with banana and some other stuff in there. But yeah, that's how crazy,
Okay.
that's how powerful a podcast ad can be.
You are living proof, Eric.
Yeah.
And how did they taste?
Well, I just bought it one time, so I didn't do a subscription or anything. I think I'll just stick to the whey protein.
Yeah,
After
yeah.
that.
I couldn't get over the mindset of like you're drinking and you see a lag or something. I couldn't.
Yeah, well, yeah, I blended them real good, but you could
I
still kind
bet.
of they still have that
Extra
crunchy
high.
feeling. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I appreciate our conversation, and I think that media kits, it makes you look so much more professional, updated in live time. And if you are looking for sponsors, it sets you apart by leaps and bounds. And even if you are not getting, looking for a sponsor, I think again it opens up those doors for opportunities and getting booked on bigger shows as well. So I appreciate your insight in helping our listener base out.
Hey, I enjoyed coming here and chatting about this. So thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, 100%. So obviously we need to let people know about PodKit, where to find it, how to sign up so they and see for those that were just listening and not watching, check out the samples because it is so cool. So yeah, how can they find it?
And just go to podk.it. That's podk.it. And as we mentioned, it's so easy to create. Once you create it the first time, you can set it and forget it. We have a free plan, and then we have a premium plan. Premium plan, you'll be able to take advantage of the feature I was talking about, the AI finding you automatically as potential sponsors. And then there's some other cool things in the premium feature. But yeah, check it out. You can create one for free on your own.
Sweet. I'll be doing that soon.
All right.
And how do people get a hold of you if they want help with sponsorships? Because I want to make sure people have all the resources available.
Go to b2bpodpros.com. Again, b2bpodpros.com. And if you're interested and you're in the B2B space, check us out there. You can fill out an application and I will get back to you. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. And I'll have all those links in the show notes as well. Thank you again, Eric, for rocking out great things and talking media kits with us today.
Thank you, Lindsay.
All right. We'll see you next week, folks, on the Leverage Your Podcast show. That's weird.
What happened?
Oh, there we are.